Chapter 12. Doobie grabbed Molly and shook her. Nonsense! Get a grip on yourself! What do you mean? It's true, Doobie, cried Molly. There's horses! There's lots of them! Where are the horses? Are you sure? Zoe looked at Doobie. For the first time she saw him begin to panic. They've landed on rafts to the east of the island, Molly said. She was wild with fear. Sarah ran up behind her. They're coming, she yelled. We're done for, Doobie. There's hundreds of them. Get as many men as you can find and go and meet them now, yelled Doobie. Molly and Sarah ran off. Zoe didn't think they were going to find anyone. Damn, Doobie said quietly. So you didn't get everything out of the cat then, said Zoe. She felt pleased by this. Doobie was angry. We'll have to put our plan into action a bit sooner than I hoped. Come on, we're leaving. What? We're finished if we don't. This is completely different. The horses are strong, and with the cats as well, we don't stand a chance. Do you want to die? Well, come on then, to the boat. He shoved the point of his sword at her throat. She nodded. She could feel a little blood trickling down her neck. Then Doobie ran, tugging Zoe along behind him. They hurtled down the ruins of passages and streets, ducking under and over collapsed buildings. Rounding a corner, they met two unarmed men. Without pausing, Doobie charged them, swinging his sword in front of him. Eels, he yelled, and the speed of his attack gave the men no chance. They dropped to the ground in a single heap. Doobie ran on. Zoe didn't dare look at the men as she ran round them. Horses, shouted Doobie as he ran. Who'd have thought they'd team up with cats? I should have guessed. They were at the west side of the island now. Zoe had never made it this far. There, right at the water's edge, was a low wooden shed. Right, here it is, said Doobie. He fumbled with a chain round his neck. At last he pulled a key out and unlocked the doors. Get that engine started, he shouted, pulling the doors open. Zoe ran inside the shed, all the time thinking of how to get away from Doobie. Like it, she said. She looked her boat over quickly. Everything seemed okay. There were the oars she'd pulled from the wall of the Six Swans, ages ago now, it seemed, and there was something new, a small outboard motor fixed to the stern. They dragged the boat into the water, wading up to their knees. Zoe looked at the engine. She had never used one, but Dad had told her about them. He had even shown her a broken one once. This one looked okay. So how does it work? She said to Doobie. What? He screamed. Don't you know? It's your engine, she yelled back. I thought you... No, shouted Doobie. Zoe could see he was beginning to panic. I think you pulled this cord, Zoe said. She pulled the starter. Nothing. She pulled again. Nothing. It has got petrol in, hasn't it? But as Zoe asked the question, she knew the answer. She had never used petrol herself, but Dad had said that it was what made engines work. The blank look on Doobie's face said it all. What's petrol? He asked. Oh, great, said Zoe. Well, we'll just have to row for it then. And Zoe fumbled with the crude clamps that were holding the motor to Leica's stern. What are you doing? Doobie shouted at her. It's no use without petrol. It won't go. I'm taking it off. It'll only slow us down. The useless engine splashed into the water behind the boat. Doobie! A voice yelled at them from the island. What's going on? They turned to see Spat and Munchkin coming after them. You were going to go without us, you! Screamed Spat. So what? Said Doobie, and turned to meet them with his sword. His usual calm had returned. Spat and Doobie fought. Munchkin hung back, hesitating. Seeing the fight, Zoe took her chance and put out to sea in the boat. Doobie was having more trouble with Spat than he'd had with the two horses. Spat was armed with a sword, very similar to Doobie's. They splashed wildly in the shallows, thrashing about with their weapons. Munchkin stood nervously at the water's edge as if trying to decide what to do. Rowing away from the awful fight, Zoe had a perfect view of it all. Suddenly, Munchkin jumped into the sea and started to swim for Zoe's boat. Wait, he spluttered, take me with you. Distracted by this, Spat and Doobie paused in their struggle for a second. Then Doobie snapped out of it. He shoved his sword into Spat. Spat slid into the shallows, which reddened around him. By now, Munchkin was well out to sea, about halfway from the shore to the boat. Come back here, yelled Doobie from the shore. Come back, you traitor. You're supposed to be taking me. Doobie looked stupid, jumping up and down in the water, yelling his head off. Munchkin, I order you to come back now. Munchkin kept on splashing through the water. Zoe stopped. Oh, William, she said, Should I come back for you just in case? She shipped her oars and waited for Munchkin to reach her. After a minute of splashing, Munchkin grabbed the gunwale of the boat. Zoe wondered why Doobie hadn't tried to follow. They weren't that far offshore yet. Come round to the stern, give me your hands, said Zoe, and she helped Munchkin over the back of the boat. Munchkin fell spluttering into the bottom of the boat. Take the other oar, said Zoe. Let's get out of here before Doobie comes after us. Munchkin climbed beside Zoe and started to row. He won't do that. How can you be sure? Asked Zoe. He can't swim, said Munchkin, grinning. I think he's going to have to learn. As they rowed away, they could vaguely hear the sounds of the fighting outside the cathedral coming to an end. Doobie was by now a tiny figure standing motionless on the shore. Why did you wait for me? Asked Munchkin. I don't know. I didn't think you stood much of a chance if I left you to Doobie. And you didn't tell him about what I said, about where my boat was. No, said Munchkin simply. But what about him? Who do you think won the battle? Who knows, but I think Doobie will be all right. People like him always are. It's William I'm worried about. I wanted to take him with me. I saw him go down in the fight, but maybe he's okay. Munchkin shrugged. Don't be sad, he said. He would never have left anyway. They rowed in silence for a while. Zoe realised they ought to take stock of their direction before they went too much further. She fished in her pockets for her compass. Oh no, she said. What? Asked Munchkin. My compass. I've lost it. It must have fallen out my pocket when we ran to the boat. So how do we know where we're going? Asked Munchkin. We don't. Not exactly. We'll head for where the sun's going to set. That's west, roughly. West, said Munchkin. That's what William used to say. Salvation is to the west of the sea. There's a city called Golgan Nusa. That's what William said anyway. He was always saying it. It was one of his stories. Something clicked in Zoe's mind. She made the connection and at last understood what William had been trying to say. She felt her heart lift as she thought of him and of how his story was helping them. I didn't think you took any notice of William, Munchkin shrugged. I liked his stories, that's all. Made everything seem better. Zoe smiled. Well, she said, that's where we're going then.